Okay, so they're asking which aspects of subway construction will the speaker talk about in this lecture. So we're expecting them to say something about what their focus is going to be um, going forward. So last week we looked at urban regeneration and some of its consequences. So they're talking about what they talked about last lecture. Um, and that I think what follows after that is a bit of a recap, like they're retelling some of the things um, that they talked about the previous week.
Yeah,
Read it aloud and point out where I think it
yeah,
changes.
yeah.
Last week we looked at urban regeneration and some of the consequences of this, one of which was the relocation of people from urban to suburban areas to largely allow them a better standard of living because housing is cheaper in the suburbs, so they have more disposable income. So this is what last week was about. It was about people moving around.
I
So it's the amount of your income, the part of your income that you have, you're able to decide what to do with it.
okay,
So
got
if it's disposable, it's income that you can use um, by choice rather than by necessity.
it.
So some of your income you just have to spend regardless. So if your housing is cheaper, then you have more money to spend on other things, basically, that you can choose what to spend them on. But they have to commute, and commuters need rapid transport to get them from A to B. So subway construction is, well, it's booming in some parts of the world. It's clearly being seen as the answer to the type of migration that I've just mentioned. It often gets huge public support because, well, if a subway is going to help you have a better lifestyle, sorry, then what's there to argue about? Well, quite a lot actually. Okay, so now they're talking about subway construction in general and how it gets public support, but then he says, "What's there to argue about?" So
Sure.
what's there to argue about? He's kind of saying it's kind of a rhetorical question. Okay, people generally support this because it gives them a better lifestyle. Why would you argue with that?
Okay.
Why? What's the problem? And then he says, "Well, there's actually quite a lot to argue about. Quite a lot, actually." So what he's saying is there are actually a lot of reasons why we might disagree with building subways. For a start, in order to go ahead with a major project of this kind, you need to be absolutely sure that the ground, and more to the point, what lies beneath the ground, can support underground transport. So this is where we're talking about geological conditions.
Mm.
And to address questions like that, engineers have to be really experienced, really knowledgeable about the local area, water levels, land formation, and so on. So if we're talking about engineers, we're talking about professionals. And those key issues are what I want to focus on today. So, geological conditions and professionals. So, he's just said that there are some reasons that we shouldn't be so excited or so supportive of subway construction. There's some challenges, we might say, building subways, and some of them are to do with geology, and then the kinds of professionals that need to be employed to deal with those conditions.
Engineers, you mean?
Yeah, so when they say engineers, they mean professionals.
So,
So
yeah. Mm.
passengers don't think about construction, they trust other better qualified people to do it for them. So again, that's professionals. And governments have to choose these people very carefully. So this is about who do they employ, who do they pay to make these decisions.
Uh, I,
Um, yeah.
so,
So we're imagining that this is the beginning of a lecture. And at the beginning of the lecture, they say, last week we talked about these things. But
Mhm.
then later on, he says, he says, uh,
So then what's
th
there to argue
those
about? Yeah.
those key issues are what I want to focus on today. What I want to focus on today, that is what I'm going to go on to talk about. So this is like the beginning of a lecture, and what's going to come after is the lecture itself. And he's going to focus on geology and on engineers and how we
Mhm.
know whether they are the right
Great.
ones to pay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I got it.